Admiral Helena Voss stood on the bridge of the colony ship Horizon's Dawn, staring at the communication screen with disbelief. The message from the Galactic Council had just arrived, and every word felt like a knife to her chest. Around her, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence, their faces pale with shock and growing horror. "They're not coming," her first officer whispered. "They're actually not coming." Helena's hands gripped the edge of her command console until her knuckles turned white. 6 months ago, humanity had been celebrating. After 2 decades of diplomatic efforts, Earth had finally been accepted into the Galactic Council, a confederation of 47 alien species that spanned hundreds of star systems. Humanity had been so proud, so eager to take its place among the stars alongside civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. Then the violet rot came. It started on the colony ship New Beijing, 3 weeks into their journey to the Kepler 442 system. At first, the doctors thought it was just a viral infection, something that would pass with standard treatment. But the purple lesions spread quickly, and within days, people were dying. The disease jumped from ship to ship despite every quarantine protocol humanity had developed. It was unlike anything Earth's medical science had ever encountered. Helena remembered the panic in those early days, the screaming over communication channels, the desperate pleas from ship captains watching their crews die. The colony fleet, once filled with hope and excitement, had become a floating graveyard. Over 30,000 humans were infected across 12 ships. Earth immediately contacted the Galactic Council, begging for help. The Council had thousands of years of medical knowledge. They had dealt with countless diseases across hundreds of worlds. Surely they could help humanity fight this plague. The Council had promised to send aid. They said their best medical teams were being assembled. Helena remembered the relief she felt when that message arrived. Humanity was not alone anymore. They had friends among the stars, but weeks passed and no help came. Instead, the Council requested more data. They wanted samples. They wanted detailed reports. Helena sent everything they asked for, even as more of her people died every single day. The morgues on every ship were overflowing. Families were broken. Children were orphaned. And still, the Council only asked for more information. Then came the debates. Helena watched them through the public council feeds, her horror growing with each session. The Council was not discussing how to help humanity. They were discussing whether humanity should be helped at all. Speaker Thelxian, a tall insectoid being with silver chitin and multifaceted eyes, led the opposition. Helena would never forget his words as he addressed the council chamber, his mechanical translator giving his clicking speech a cold, emotionless quality. "The risk is too great," Thelxian said. "This disease is unlike anything in our databases. It may be biological warfare from beyond the galactic rim. It may be a natural plague that has laid dormant for eons. We cannot risk exposing our populations to this threat. Humanity is a young species. They number only 11 billion across one world and a few dozen colonies. The Council represents trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. The mathematics are simple." Other Council members argued for humanitarian aid. The Zenthiri, a species of aquatic beings, pleaded for mercy. The Karathi, peaceful telepaths, argued that abandoning humanity would be a moral stain the Council could never wash away. But fear won over compassion. The vote came after 6 weeks of debate. 6 weeks during which another 8,000 humans died. Helena watched the voting display with tears streaming down her face as species after species chose quarantine over rescue. The final count was devastating. 31 species voted for complete isolation of human space, 12 voted to provide aid, and 4 abstained. The quarantine barrier went up the next day. It was a marvel of Council technology, a network of satellites that created an impenetrable energy field around Earth's entire solar system and every human colony. Nothing could get in. More importantly, nothing could get out. Humanity was sealed away from the rest of the galaxy, imprisoned in their own corner of space. The last transmission from the Council was brief and clinical. For the protection of galactic civilization, humanity is hereby placed under indefinite quarantine. This decision is final and not subject to appeal. We regret this necessity. Helena sent one final message back before the barrier fully activated, cutting off all communication. She chose her words carefully, knowing they might be humanity's last words to the galaxy that had betrayed them. "To the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady despite the rage and grief burning in her chest. "You have shown us your true nature. When we needed you most, when we were dying and begging for help, you chose fear over compassion. You chose calculation over mercy. We asked for friends and found only cowards." She paused, looking around at her bridge crew, at the determined faces of the survivors who had weathered so much death and loss. "We will remember this. Every human who survives this plague, every child born in the years to come will know what the galaxy did to us. We will remember that when humanity reached out its hand in friendship, the galaxy slapped it away. We will remember that when we were at our weakest, you sealed us away to die alone." Her eyes hardened and she leaned forward, staring directly into the camera. "But here is what you should remember. Humanity survived the Black Death. We survived 2 world wars. We survived nuclear weapons and climate disasters and a dozen other catastrophes that should have ended us. We survive and we adapt and we overcome. Whatever happens to us behind this barrier, know that we will remember what you did. And if we survive, if we find a cure and rebuild and grow strong again, we will remember." The transmission ended, the barrier completed, and humanity was alone. 300 years had passed since humanity's quarantine, and the galaxy had moved on. In the grand archives of the Galactic Council, humanity was reduced to a single paragraph in the historical databases, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unknown diseases, a sad footnote in the long story of galactic civilization. Council Admiral Zethmora of the Karathi had read that paragraph many times. Her species were telepaths, capable of feeling the emotions of others, and the ancient records carried a psychic imprint of deep shame. Her ancestors had voted to help humanity, but they had been outvoted. The guilt of that decision had been passed down through generations of Karathi collective memory. Now, as she stood in the emergency session of the council chamber, Zethmora wondered if the galaxy was about to face its own abandonment. "Another fleet has gone silent," High Counselor Vexthar announced, his reptilian features twisted with barely concealed fear. "The 7th Defense Fleet, 40 capital ships and 200 support vessels entered the Outer Reach sector 3 days ago. We received 1 distress signal, then nothing. They are gone." Silence filled the massive chamber. Representatives from all 47 member species sat in their respective sections, and Zethmora could feel the waves of terror rolling off them. Her telepathic abilities had always been a gift, but right now she wished she could shut them off. The fear was overwhelming. The Devourers had arrived 6 months ago. No one knew where they came from. The best guess was that they had originated from another galaxy entirely, consuming everything in their path before crossing the dark void between galaxies. They had appeared at the galactic rim, at the edge of charted space, and they had been unstoppable ever since. The first contact had been a disaster. A Council exploration fleet had encountered a massive biological entity that defied all understanding. It was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was alive, a creature the size of a small moon, covered in what looked like organic weapons and surrounded by thousands of smaller organisms that acted as fighters and boarding parties. The fleet had tried to communicate. The Devourers had responded by consuming them. That was the truly horrifying part. The Devourers did not just destroy, they absorbed. They broke down matter at the molecular level and incorporated it into their own biomass. Ships, stations, even entire planets disappeared into their flesh. And with each meal, the Devourer swarm grew larger. "We have lost 17 systems in the past month," Vexthar continued. "Our best projections indicate that at their current rate of advancement, they will reach the core worlds within 2 years. Perhaps less. What about the new weapons?" someone called out. "The quantum disruptors that the Zenthiri developed." "Ineffective," a Zenthiri representative answered, his aquatic environment suit bubbling with agitation. "We deployed them at the Battle of Helix Station. The Devourers adapted within hours. They evolved countermeasures faster than our scientists believed possible." Zethmora felt the despair spreading through the chamber like a disease. The Galactic Council had maintained peace for over 1,000 years. They had technology that humanity could only have dreamed of 3 centuries ago. Faster than light travel, energy weapons, genetic engineering, terraforming, artificial intelligence. They had seemed invincible. But the Devourers were something new, something from outside their frame of reference. And the galaxy was losing. "We need to consider evacuation protocols," another counselor suggested. "If we cannot stop them, we must at least save our populations." We could fall back to the inner rim, establish new defensive lines. Fall back where? Vexthar snapped. They consume entire star systems. There is nowhere to run that they cannot follow. It was Speaker Thelxian who spoke next. He was old now, ancient even by the long-lived standards of his species. His silver chitin had dulled to gray and his movements were slow and careful. But his mind was still sharp. There may be one option we have not considered, he said quietly. The old quarantine zone. The chamber erupted in confusion. Zethmora felt a spike of different emotions now, not fear but curiosity mixed with confusion. The human quarantine? Vexthar asked. Surely you cannot be serious. That was 300 years ago. They are gone. The plague likely killed them all. Perhaps, Thelxian said, but the quarantine barrier still exists. I have verified this personally. The satellite network continues to function, which suggests someone has been maintaining it. And if humans survived, their space may contain habitable worlds we could use as refuge. Habitable worlds contaminated with a deadly plague, another counselor objected. A plague from 3 centuries ago, Thelxian countered. Either they found a cure or they died. If they died, the worlds are merely empty. If they survived and found a cure, then the danger has passed. Either way, we need to investigate. We are desperate enough to consider any option. Zethmora listened to the debate with mixed feelings. She remembered the stories passed down through her people's collective memory. The shame of abandoning humanity, the terrible decision made out of fear. Part of her wanted to find humans alive and well, if only to assuage her species' guilt. But another part feared what they might find. The vote was called. This time, unlike 3 centuries ago, it was unanimous. The council would send an expeditionary fleet to investigate human space. Zethmora volunteered to lead it. 3 weeks later, her fleet of 20 ships approached the quarantine barrier. The satellites were still there, still functioning after 300 years. That alone was remarkable. Council technology was advanced, but even their equipment required regular maintenance. Either humans were still alive, or they had automated systems far more sophisticated than anyone had given them credit for. Prepare to send the shutdown codes, Zethmora ordered. The council had kept the override protocols, a way to disable the barrier in case of emergency. It had seemed prudent at the time, a way to maintain control even in quarantine. The codes were transmitted. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the barrier flickered and died, 3 centuries of imprisonment ending in an instant. Scanning the Sol system, her sensor officer reported, I'm detecting multiple gravitational anomalies. Artificial structures. Energy signatures. There's something there, Admiral. Something big. Zethmora felt her pulse quicken. Set course for Earth, maximum caution. We don't know what we're going to find. As her fleet moved deeper into human space, Zethmora stared at the view screen and wondered what had become of humanity in 300 years of isolation. Had they survived? Had they forgiven? Or had 3 centuries of abandonment turned them into something else entirely? She was about to find out. The warning came 3 seconds after Admiral Zethmora's fleet crossed into the Sol system. 3 seconds. That was all the time it took for humanity to detect them, identify them, and respond. Admiral, we're being scanned, her sensor officer called out, his voice tight with alarm. Multiple sources. The scanning technology is nothing like ours. It's penetrating our shields like they're not even there. Where are the scans coming from? Zethmora demanded. Everywhere, the officer replied, his confusion evident. I'm detecting sources from the asteroid belt, from Mars, from dozens of small objects scattered throughout the system. Admiral, they've been watching us since we entered. They knew we were coming. Before Zethmora could respond, her view screen flickered and changed. A human face appeared, male, perhaps in his 50s, with dark skin and gray-streaked hair. His expression was neutral, almost bored, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. Council vessels, the human said in perfect galactic standard, the common language of the galaxy. You are in violation of human territorial space. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded or you will be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply. Zethmora's bridge crew erupted in shocked murmurs. The human had spoken with such casual authority, as if he was the one in the position of power. As if 20 council warships meant nothing to him. This is Admiral Zethmora of the Galactic Council, she responded, keeping her voice calm. We mean no harm. We've come to investigate the status of humanity and to offer assistance if needed. The human's expression did not change. 28 seconds. We have disabled the quarantine barrier as a gesture of goodwill, Zethmora continued, feeling desperation creep into her voice. We wish to open diplomatic relations. You broke into our home, the human said flatly, and you call it goodwill. 15 seconds. I will not warn you again. Zethmora made a split-second decision. All ships cut engines. Raise shields but do not power weapons. Comply with their instructions. Her officers looked at her in disbelief, but they obeyed. The mighty council fleet came to a halt, vulnerable and exposed in human space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to tear apart. Ships appeared around them, not from faster-than-light jumps which left detectable energy signatures. These ships simply appeared, as if they had been hiding in a dimension that overlapped with normal space. One moment the scanners showed empty space. The next moment there were vessels surrounding Zethmora's fleet. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Sleek hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Organic curves mixed with geometric precision. And they were massive, each one easily twice the size of a council capital ship. Zethmora counted 30 of them, and her sensors insisted there were more she could not detect. The human on her screen smiled for the first time, but it was not a friendly expression. Welcome to Sol, Admiral. I am Admiral Cale Thorne of the Earth Defense Fleet. You will follow my ships to the designated holding area while we decide what to do with you. Any deviation from the approved course will be interpreted as a hostile act. Do you understand? I understand, Zethmora whispered. The journey to Earth took 6 hours at reduced speed. 6 hours during which Zethmora's sensors gathered data that shook everything she thought she knew about humanity. The asteroid belt had been transformed into a massive industrial complex. Thousands of facilities mining resources and building ships. Mars was not the barren red desert she expected. It was green. They had somehow terraformed an entire planet. But it was Earth that truly shocked her. The planet was a paradise, even more beautiful than the images from 300 years ago. Vast forests and oceans covered the surface, but now orbital structures ringed the world like jewelry. Cities floated in the clouds. Space elevators stretched from surface to orbit. And everywhere there were ships. Thousands of them, from small personal craft to massive vessels that dwarfed anything in the council fleet. How many people live here? Her first officer asked in awe. Scanning the network traffic and energy consumption, the sensor officer replied. Based on the data, I estimate 80 to 90 billion humans in the Sol system alone. Admiral, they did not just survive. They thrived. They were taken to a massive station orbiting Earth. A structure so large it could have housed Zethmora's entire species. Docking procedures were smooth and efficient, handled by artificial intelligences that seemed almost eerily intelligent compared to Council AI. Admiral Thorne met them in person at the airlock, accompanied by an honor guard of human soldiers wearing armor that Zethmora's military experts immediately identified as more advanced than anything the Council possessed. Thorne looked even more imposing in person. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the bearing of someone who had commanded respect their entire life. Follow me, he said simply, and led them through corridors that mixed artistic beauty with practical military design. The station was alive with activity, humans moving with purpose and confidence. They glanced at the alien visitors with curiosity but no fear. That lack of fear was perhaps the most telling detail of all. They were brought to a conference room with a view of Earth rotating slowly below. Already seated at the table was a woman who introduced herself as President Sarah Okonkwo, the elected leader of Earth's unified government. She was younger than Zethmora expected, perhaps in her 40s, with kind eyes that somehow made the Admiral feel even more guilty. Please sit, President Okonkwo said, gesturing to the chairs. I imagine you have many questions. But first I have one for you. Why are you here? The Council made it clear 300 years ago that humanity was to be isolated forever. What changed? Zethmora explained about the Devourers, about the destruction they had caused, about the desperate need for any advantage, any hope, even if it meant returning to the species they had abandoned. President Okonkwo listened without interruption. When Zethmora finished, the president was quiet for a long moment. We know about the Devourers, she finally said. We've been monitoring galactic events through stealth probes for over 200 years. We watched your first contact with them. We watched your fleets burn. We listened to your distress calls begging for help, for aid, for any chance of survival. The president's eyes hardened, and we debated whether we should respond. Just like you did 3 centuries ago. The words hit Zeth Mora like a physical blow. You knew? You heard us calling for help and you did nothing? We held votes, Admiral Thorne said, his voice cold. We had long discussions about whether the Council deserved our assistance. We calculated the risks. We worried about exposing ourselves to danger. We did exactly what you did to us. And what did you decide? Zeth Mora asked, though she dreaded the answer. President Okonkwo stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth. That is what we are still deciding, Admiral. You came here looking for refuge, for salvation, but you need to understand what you are asking. You want us to risk our people, our ships, our civilization to save a galaxy that left us to die. Give me one good reason why we should. The debate raged across Earth for 3 weeks. Every news channel carried the arguments. Every public forum was filled with heated discussions. Humanity was split down the middle on whether to help the galaxy that had abandoned them. Admiral Cale Thorne watched the proceedings from his office overlooking Earth's primary orbital shipyard. Through the massive windows he could see the Terra Armada in various stages of construction. 10,000 warships, the product of humanity's 3-century evolution. Each one represented technology that would seem like magic to the Council species. The vote is tomorrow, his aide said quietly. The global parliament is still deadlocked. Thorne nodded, his expression troubled. He understood both sides. Part of him, the part that remembered the stories passed down from his ancestor Helena Voss, wanted to let the Council burn. They deserved it after what they had done. But another part, the part that had sworn an oath to protect humanity, knew that letting trillions die out of spite would make humans no better than those who had abandoned them. The decision came not from the politicians, but from President Okonkwo herself. She had spent the 3 weeks meeting with philosophers, military leaders, religious figures, and common citizens. She had listened to arguments from every angle, and in the end, she made her choice. The president addressed the world from the same chamber where the United Nations had once met. Before Earth unified its governments in the dark years following the quarantine. My fellow humans, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of human space through quantum-linked broadcasts. 300 years ago, our ancestors faced extinction. They begged for help and received only silence and imprisonment. The pain of that betrayal has been passed down through generations. It lives in our history books, our monuments, our collective memory. She paused, letting her words sink in. Now the galaxy that abandoned us comes begging for the same help they denied our ancestors. Many of you have asked why we should help them, why we should risk our people for those who showed us no mercy. These are fair questions, and I will give you an honest answer. President Okonkwo's expression became intense, passionate. We should help them precisely because of what they did to us. We remember the pain of abandonment. We remember the desperation of calling for help and hearing nothing but silence. We remember what it feels like to watch our people die while others debate whether our lives have value. Her voice rose, filling the chamber with conviction. We help them because we refuse to become what they were. We help them because we are better than they were. We help them because if we let trillions die out of spite, then the violet rot did not just kill thousands of our ancestors. It killed our humanity, our compassion, our ability to be better than those who wronged us. She slammed her hand on the podium. We are humanity. We survive, we adapt, we overcome, and we do not abandon others the way we were abandoned even when they deserve it, especially when they deserve it, because that is what separates us from them. That is what makes us human. The chamber erupted in applause. The vote that followed was no longer deadlocked. Humanity would go to war. But President Okonkwo was not finished. She met with Admiral Zeth Mora and the Council delegation the next day, and her terms were clear and non-negotiable. Humanity will deploy our forces to fight the Devourers, she said, but we will do so under our own command, following our own strategies. The Council will provide full access to all historical records, all technology databases, and all intelligence on the Devourers. You will recognize human sovereignty over our current territory, with no restrictions or quarantines. And when this war is over, the Galactic Council will be reformed with humanity as a founding member with full veto power. Those terms are extreme, one of the Council delegates protested. Those terms are generous, Admiral Thorne cut in coldly. You are facing extinction. We are offering salvation. The price is your pride and your acknowledgement that you were wrong 300 years ago. Pay it or face the devourers alone, the council agreed. They had no choice. The mobilization of the Terra Armada was the most impressive military operation in galactic history. 10,000 warships, each one crewed by a combination of human personnel and advanced artificial intelligence, deployed across 17 star systems simultaneously using quantum fold, technology that made traditional faster-than-light travel look primitive. Admiral Thorne commanded the operation from the flagship Remembrance, a massive dreadnought named in honor of those who had died during the Violet Rot. His second in command was Admiral Zeth Mora, who had requested to serve alongside humanity. Her species' guilt demanded that she fight beside those they had abandoned. The first engagement came at the Threshold Relay, a critical hub connecting the outer and inner rims of the galaxy. The Devourers had been slowly consuming the system, their massive bioships breaking down the station piece by piece. All units, this is Thorne. Execute Cascade Protocol, the Admiral ordered. What happened next redefined warfare. Human ships did not engage the Devourers in traditional combat. Instead, they attacked in perfect synchronization across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Quantum-entangled weapon systems allowed thousands of ships to fire as if they were a single weapon. The result was devastating. Singularity bombs, devices that created miniature black holes, tore through the Devourer bioships like paper. Dimensional disruptors phased the creatures partially out of normal space, causing them to tear themselves apart. Nanite swarms, microscopic machines that could replicate and adapt faster than even the Devourers could evolve, consumed the enemy from within. But the Devourers fought back. They were intelligent, adaptive, and terrifyingly effective. The battle raged for 3 days. Human ships were destroyed. Thousands of crew members died, but slowly, inevitably, the Devourers were pushed back. "Sir, we're detecting a retreat," the tactical officer reported. "The Devourers are falling back toward the edge of the system." "Do not pursue," Thorne ordered. "We've accomplished our objective. The Threshold Relay is secure. The victory was humanity's first major success, but it came at a cost. 73 ships destroyed, over 15,000 humans dead." Thorne stood in his ready room after the battle, looking at the casualty reports and wondered if President Okonkwo's idealism was worth this price. But the war continued. System by system, battle by battle, humanity pushed the Devourers back. The Council species fought alongside them, their own ships upgraded with human technology, their crews trained in human tactics. The partnership was awkward and filled with lingering resentment, but it worked. 6 months into the war, human intelligence discovered something crucial. The Devourers were not simply wandering predators. They had come through a dimensional rift at the edge of the galaxy, a tear in space-time that connected to another universe entirely. As long as that rift remained open, more Devourers could come through. "We need to close it," Thorne said during the command briefing. "If we do not, this war will never end." "Closing a dimensional rift of that size would require weapons we have not fully tested," his chief scientist warned. "The dimensional collapse bombs are theoretical. We do not know if they will work or what side effects they might cause. Then we test them in combat," Thorne said grimly. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to end this war." The final battle would take place at the rift itself, deep in uncharted space where the Devourers had first entered the galaxy. It would be the largest military engagement in history, and humanity was about to discover if their technology was advanced enough to seal a hole in reality itself. The dimensional rift hung in space like a wound in reality itself. Through Admiral Thorne's view screen, it looked like a massive spiral of colors that should not exist, twisting and churning as it connected two universes that were never meant to touch. Around it, the Devourer swarm gathered, hundreds of bioships ranging from fighter-sized organisms to moon-sized monstrosities, all of them protecting the gateway to their home dimension. "Fleet status," Thorne ordered, his voice calm despite the tension on the bridge. "All 10,000 ships in position," his tactical officer reported. "Council forces are holding the perimeter." "We're ready for your command, sir." Beside Thorne, Admiral Zeth Mora watched the display with a mixture of awe and terror. In the 6 months since humanity had entered the war, she had witnessed things she never thought possible. She had seen human ingenuity, courage, and determination push back an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. But this final battle would be the ultimate test. The dimensional collapse bombs are armed and ready. the weapons officer announced. "But sir, I need to remind you that we have never tested these at full scale. The cascade effect could spread beyond the rift. It could destabilize local spacetime for light years in every direction." "I am aware of the risks," Thorn said quietly. He thought of his ancestor Helena Voss, who had watched her people die while the galaxy debated their value. He thought of President Okonkwo, who had chosen mercy over vengeance. He thought of the 15,000 humans who had already died in this war, sacrificing themselves for species that had once left humanity to die. "All ships, this is Admiral Thorn. Today we end this war. Today we close the door that should never have been opened. Whatever happens, know that you have fought with honor. You have shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Now let us finish what we started." The battle began. The Devourers reacted instantly to the fleet's advance, their bioships surging forward in a massive wave of organic fury. The space between the human fleet and the rift became a hell of weapons fire, explosions, and dying ships. Human vessels unleashed everything they had. Singularity weapons tore holes in reality, swallowing Devourer ships whole. Quantum disruptors scrambled the enemy at the molecular level. Nanite swarms consumed biomass and converted it into more weapons. And through it all, the dimensional collapse bombs advanced toward the rift, protected by layers upon layers of human ships willing to die to ensure they reached their target. "Sir, we are taking heavy losses," the tactical officer called out. "The Devourers are concentrating their forces on the bomb carriers. We have lost 12 escort ships in the last minute. All available ships reinforce the bomb carriers," Thorn ordered. "Nothing gets through. Nothing." The Remembrance shook as a Devourer bioship crashed into its shields, trying to breach the hull through sheer mass and fury. The ship's automated defenses vaporized the attacker, but more came, an endless tide of organic weapons determined to stop humanity from sealing their way home. Seth Mora found herself working alongside the human crew, her telepathic abilities used to coordinate with council ships on the perimeter. She could feel the terror and determination of 1,000 different minds across dozens of species, all of them fighting together for the first time in galactic history. The irony was not lost on her. It had taken an existential threat to unite the galaxy, and it had taken humanity, the species the Council had abandoned, to lead them. Bomb carriers are approaching deployment range. Weapons reported. 30 seconds to optimal position. Those 30 seconds felt like hours. More ships died. More crew members sacrificed themselves. Thorn watched the casualty count climb with each passing moment, each number representing someone's parent, child, friend, or lover. 10 seconds. 5. Deployment range achieved. "Fire," Thorn ordered. 6-dimensional collapse bombs launched from their carriers, small devices that contained humanity's most dangerous technology. They looked insignificant, tiny objects lost in the vastness of space, but they carried enough destructive power to reshape reality itself. The bombs reached the rift and detonated simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the rift began to scream. There was no sound in space, but every sensor on every ship picked up the distortion, translating it into a noise that human and alien ears interpreted as a howl of cosmic agony. The rift collapsed inward, the spiral of impossible colors contracting faster and faster as space-time tried to heal the wound that had been torn in it. The Devourers went into a frenzy, cut off from their home dimension. Realizing they were trapped in a universe that was now their grave, they threw themselves at the human fleet with suicidal fury. The casualties on both sides skyrocketed. "Sir, the rift is closing, but the dimensional cascade is spreading," the science officer called out in alarm. "It is affecting local space. We need to retreat immediately." "All ships fall back to minimum safe distance," Thorn ordered. "Maximum speed." The fleet turned and burned, racing away from the collapsing rift as space-time writhed and twisted behind them. Ships that were too slow or too damaged to keep up were caught in the cascade, torn apart by forces that existed beyond normal physics. The Devourers, unable to follow, were consumed by the same energies they had used to cross between universes. When it was over, when the rift finally sealed and space returned to something approaching normal, Thorn looked at the casualty reports and felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. 372 ships destroyed. Over 48,000 humans dead. Thousands more from Council species. But the war was over. The Devourers were cut off, trapped and dying in a universe that was poison to them. The galaxy was saved. The return to Council space was somber. Humanity had won, but victory tasted like ashes when bought with so much blood. Thorn stood on the bridge of the Remembrance as they approached the rebuilt Council chambers, now located on a neutral world equidistant from all member species. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. President Okonkwo stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species, her expression serious but not unkind. "The Galactic Council is dissolved," she announced. "In its place, we established the Stellar Commonwealth, a new federation built on principles of mutual defense, shared prosperity, and the absolute promise that no species will ever be abandoned as humanity once was." Speaker Thelxian, ancient and frail, approached the podium with difficulty. His voice was weak but clear. 300 years ago, I cast the deciding vote to abandon humanity. I have lived with that shame every day since. I cannot undo what was done, but I can offer what I should have offered then. On behalf of my species and all those who voted for quarantine, I apologize. We were wrong. We were cowards, and humanity's courage in saving us despite our failure is a lesson we will never forget. Other species followed, each offering their own apologies, their own acknowledgments of guilt. Zethamora spoke for the Karathi, her telepathic projection carrying the genuine remorse her species had held for 3 centuries. President Okonkwo accepted each apology with grace, but her response was firm. "We accept your apologies, but we will not forget. Throughout the Commonwealth, we will build memorial stations at every world that was lost, every battle that was fought, every person who died. These memorials will serve a dual purpose. They will honor the dead, but they will also remind the living of what happens when fear triumphs over compassion." The Commonwealth was established with humanity as one of 5 founding members with special privileges. Human ships would patrol the borders. Human technology would be shared freely. Human representatives would have a voice in all major decisions. But Thorn found no satisfaction in any of it. He stood in his quarters aboard the Remembrance, looking at a hologram of the casualty list, and wondered if President Okonkwo's idealism had been worth the cost. There was a chime at his door. Zethamora entered without waiting for permission, her alien features showing an expression that her translator identified as grief. "You are thinking about the cost," she said. It was not a question. Her telepathy made questions unnecessary. "We could have intervened earlier," Thorn said quietly. "We watched the Council suffer for months before we acted. How many died because of our delay? How many could we have saved if we had helped immediately instead of making them beg? You did what the Council did to humanity," Zethamora said. "You made them feel what it is like to be abandoned. Part of me understands why. Part of me thinks they deserved it." Thorn turned to face her. "Does that make us any better than they were?" "Perhaps not," Zethamora admitted. "But you did help in the end. You saved us despite what we did to you. That counts for something. That counts for everything." 50 years later, a new species made first contact with the Commonwealth. They were a young civilization, just beginning to explore their stellar neighborhood, and they broadcast a message of greeting and hope to the stars. The response came not from one species, but from dozens. Ships from every corner of the Commonwealth converged on the newcomer's system, not with weapons, but with gifts. Technology, knowledge, medicine, protection, and leading them all was a human ship, the newest vessel to bear the name Remembrance. Its captain stood on the bridge and transmitted a message to the aliens below. "Welcome to the galactic community. We are the Stellar Commonwealth, and we are here to help. No matter what challenges you face, you will not face them alone. This is our promise, and we will never break it. Never again." In his office on Earth, now retired and elderly, Admiral Cale Thorn watched the broadcast with tears in his eyes. Beside him, President Okonkwo, also old but still sharp, smiled with satisfaction. "We did it," she said quietly. "We made them better. We made the galaxy better." Thorn nodded, thinking of his ancestor Helena Voss, of the 48,000 who died in the war, of all those who had sacrificed so that the galaxy could learn from its mistakes. "Yes," he agreed, "we did. And humanity will make sure they never forget the cost of that lesson." Outside, Earth turned in space, a blue-green jewel surrounded by the greatest civilization in galactic history. Humanity had been abandoned, had been left to die, had suffered in isolation for 300 years, and they had emerged not as conquerors or tyrants, but as the galaxy's conscience. as proof that mercy, compassion, and the refusal to become what hurt you were the true marks of strength. The galaxy had abandoned them, but humanity had saved it anyway. That was the real victory.